All right. Hi, everyone. So, I'm going to do another Mindgasms Quickie video here. And wanted to talk about Islam. And so I'm going to ramble about Islam for a few minutes. And the three people or so who pay attention to what I actually say have probably already heard this. But anyway, I used to be a militant atheist and follow this kind of like seemingly typical militant atheist mindset against Islam, which is like, Islam is evil. The Quran is so much worse than the Bible, and it's so much more barbaric and shit like that, like women are second-class citizens in these Muslim countries and they can't drive or vote and all that kind of stuff. So they kind of seem to paint this picture of Islam as if like it's basically these barbaric archaic views are mainstream because Islam hasn't gone through the same kind of reformation that Christianity did with the Protestant Reformation. And how my thoughts have personally been changed about that now, and I'm not saying I have the final correct opinion on this either. You're always finding out how you're wrong in the future. But anyway, how my thoughts have changed are that it seems like that's not necessarily what mainstream views are in the Western world as they apparently are. Like it doesn't seem like Islam has gone through the same type of reformation as the Protestant Reformation either. That seems kind of true, but not the extent to which a lot of militant atheists claim. And it just seems like I've talked to some Muslims and I've learned a little bit about different Muslim views of the world and how Islam has actually contributed to history in terms of science and other subjects as well. And so it's not as if like Muslims in general have these really archaic traditional mainstream views that Christianity basically used to also have. That's not necessarily how mainstream Islams are in the Western world, despite what you hear from a lot of people. Now, like I said, I don't claim to know. I have not researched Islam very much at all. I haven't visited mosques. I haven't been to the Middle East. But that's another important point too, because as my good friend Hunter Mutz says on Mixed Mental Arts, the militant atheists, they tend to paint pictures with statistics of this view of Islam based on poll results. And, like according to some polls, a lot of Muslims in these predominantly Muslim countries in the Middle East, a lot of them say on polls that they would stone apostates to death or something like that. So they would like murder people by throwing rocks at them if you're someone who is not a Muslim, supposedly. At least I think that's what the claim is. But anyway, I think that, like, for one thing, this doesn't seem like a good representative form of data and evidence for this sort of claim. Like, I don't think poll results are that reliable, for one thing. I mean, they're useful for sure, and people should definitely still keep doing them, but they're not necessarily representative of a particular general population's views on a particular subject at all, not necessarily. And like look at what the polls said about whether Trump would get elected, for example. I mean, that's just anecdotal, of course, but they were, of course, very wrong on that. And I think a good point that Joe Rogan has made many times before on his podcast is that people, like, do you know anyone who answers polls? The people who answer polls are the people who are dumb enough to fucking answer polls. So like I said, my main point in this video is that it's not that Islam is morally inferior in comparison to all other religions. My opinion, let me be clear, this is my opinion now, is that Islam, like all other religions, can be interpreted in any way that someone wants to interpret it. I talked to a guy on my podcast, Mike Spencer Bound, who's the world's most traveled man, who I think he calls himself a Muslim, but he interprets it through a Zen Buddhist perspective, which is really fascinating. And you can anyone interprets their religion through their psychological mindset at that given time, which always changes throughout every single day, and it's always informed by our culture and our upbringings and our environment that affect our genetic expression and which affects our psychology and the way we perceive any particular subject. So anyway, like I said, I'm not an expert, and these are my opinions. Islam is not evil. All right, so as always, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed to my YouTube channel, and thank you so much to everyone who's contributed to me on Patreon. I really appreciate it. And of course, thank you so fucking much to anyone else who subscribes to my YouTube channel and who contributes to me on Patreon. That means a hell of a lot to me. You've no idea how much it fucking means to me. And I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And as always, as most importantly, remember this: the funk cures all. All right, everyone. Adios until next time. Keep having mindgasms.